Shalom, shalom, shalom. Welcome, chat, to another day of yet another stream. How are we doing today, chat? Hopefully, everybody is well. Sorry that we missed Wednesday. I needed, in full disclosure, a mental health day because there's just too much stuff happening at once, and I had to cut off the least important thing. Not that you guys are not important to me. There's just a lot of stuff going on all at once right now, especially as we head into a very, very busy season. And there's a lot of conferences and travel and work and everything else that's involved in Q4. So I will be covering what we missed on Wednesday. Anybody that was here or not here on Wednesday got credit for attendance because it was on me. So we're going to go ahead and just give everybody 100% attendance. If you weren't tracking that we were gone on Wednesday, we did announce in Discord. I believe we announced in LinkedIn as well, though I can't promise that. Definitely get in the Discord. If you're not in the Discord, that is where we announce most things. That's where we keep track of most things as well. So with that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to our handy dandy PowerPoint for the day. All right, so we are on day 19/20-ish. I don't know. We're 10 weeks in. All right, this is pretty good. We're getting into my favorite section, which is Active Directory, and we're going to have quite a bit of fun. So, and with that, we're going to also go ahead and just kick off the attendance tracker, so we get that out of the way today. And the attendance code for the day is going to be Relay Me. So Relay Me. If you don't know how to take attendance by this point, then you don't need to submit attendance. If you've missed more than 3 days, please do not submit attendance. There's no point at this point. We're only tracking those who have missed 3 or less days. So you submitting your attendance just gets erased from the list at the end of the day. So welcome again to PNPT Live, week 10, day 19/20. We have a day off on day 19. So for day 20, we're going to go over Active Directory. You all should have installed your lab. There was quite a bit of lab to build because we have the domain controller and the 2 machines plus our Kali machine. So this is where if you do not have the RAM in order to build this lab out, it's okay. Just make sure that you follow along and you take notes. This is where, like, especially if you don't have the lab built, this is where GreenShot or some sort of screenshotting tool comes into play, and that you can take good notes because this is going to be crucial to finding a job in the field. Active Directory pen testing is one of the things that we interview very heavily on. And it's one of those things that I got beat up on pretty bad when I was first starting out and first interviewing. And really, the whole reason the PEH was created was because there was no Active Directory training out there at the time. So this is what separates a lot of the CTF mindset into the realistic mindset. So please take good notes today, okay? So we're going to talk about the attack strategy that we're going to have when we're doing Active Directory pen testing. And then we're going to get into some attacks today. We're going to talk about LM&R poisoning. We're going to talk about hash cracking techniques. And then we're going to talk about SMB relay attacks. That should cover us for the rest of the time. I think I've got one more topic that I've got in case we do run short. So depending on, how we do on time will depend on where we get today. But that's pretty much it for that. Any side notes? There is no class on 9.7 and 9.9. I've said this before. I'm saying it again. That way there are no surprises. 9.7 and 9.9. We are having no class. No, you cannot get free attendance. We're just taking the week off, taking a break for everybody's sake. All right. Yours truly will be speaking at a conference that week, and I will not be available. And we are in busy season, so nobody else on the team is really available to lesson plan. The amount of work that goes into lesson planning each stream is quite a bit. I would say for every hour that we put in, we probably put 4 hours in of just lesson planning. So just so you know the amount of work that kind of goes in on our end, if not more sometimes. So with that being said, let's go ahead and hop into some of the Active Directory attack vectors. I'm going to go ahead and just boot up my Windows stuff. Your Active Directory lab should look like this, and I'm going to cover what the lab looks like. I put mine in VMware only because, or VMware Pro, I should say, only because I have the tabs and it's easy for me as the teacher to kind of click through. I will still go slow when I show instructions, realizing that a lot of you won't have VMware Pro and you're going to have like 3 or 4 instances of VMware you have to click through. That's absolutely fine. But what you should have is you should have a Windows server. This is your domain controller. This is your Hydra DC. You should have a Punisher machine, your Frank Castle machine, and you should have a Spider-Man machine, your Peter Parker machine. Okay. I'm going to come in here and log into my domain controller, and we're just going to briefly walk through kind of some of the setup that we did and talk through that. And that way you guys can look at this. Let's see if I can personalize or display settings really quick. I'll make this bigger. So let's try to make this C175, how that looks. All right, that's acceptable. Okay, so what you're going to go ahead and do, I'm going to turn off the tracking so we can get rid of this little bar at the bottom. What you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and come in here, and at the bottom, let's go ahead and just look for, actually, we can do Server Manager. This might be the easiest. So if you've never been on a domain controller before, and this is your first time with Active Directory, that's okay. We could think of Active Directory, and hopefully you watch the prerequisite videos on Active Directory and a lot of the information of what Active Directory is. Okay, what I like to think of Active Directory is like, some people relate it to a like a phone book, more so LDAP, which is kind of like a phone book for computers, right? In the sense that all of our users are going to be stored here. All of our computers, all of our policies that we want to push out can be done from our domain controller. It is the brain of the operation and it tracks everything. Okay. So if you're doing an internal penetration test that is geared against Active Directory, your typical goal might be to compromise the domain controller or compromise the domain to prove that you can own pretty much everything within the domain. So I'm just going to cover some of the basics that are here, and we'll talk about some of what's in Active Directory, and then we'll kind of walk through some of the attacks that are available to it. So in the tools area, we have here the Active Directory users and computers. So this is the default screen that comes up. You don't have to get there from here. Honestly, when I get to Active Directory users and computers, I usually just type in users and computers, and that shows up right here as well. So either or would be fine. But this is a great way to like see who your users are. If you cleaned up like I did, I put my groups into their own groups, OU over here. So I have just my users. And we built some different users here, right? We have the administrative user. We've also got a administrator, domain administrator, who's Tony Stark. And then we have 2 regular users. We've got Frank Castle and Peter Parker that we set up. We set up a SQL service so we can do some Kerberoasting, and later on that we can see that putting passwords in descriptions is a very, very bad idea. So, and then we have a guest account, but that guest account is very much disabled. All right. So, and here we have also the computers that join the domain. So here you can see the computers. We've got Spider-Man and the Punisher. Pretty easy. We're not going to get too much into writing any group policies or anything like that, though we did write a custom group policy when we first set up the domain to disable Defender. I'm not sure if that's actually been pushed on my end yet. I'm going to leave Defender on intentionally to show you some stuff today. So if yours reset and you pushed your GPOs, that's fine. Otherwise, this is really it. This is a way to come in here. And if you begin on like help desk, I remember when I first started help desk, I had a manager who would not let me touch Active Directory whatsoever. It was like his thing. He didn't want to teach me. He didn't want to learn. And I remember how disappointed I was because I really wanted to learn Active Directory because that's where a ton of the tickets were. And I realized that there's some danger there. But then I got a manager who was the complete opposite. He was like, "Hey, come sit in my office. Let's take a look at Active Directory. Let me teach you." He's like, hey, this is back when Windows 7 was the main operating system. He's like, I got some licenses for Windows 10. Let's put them on some computers. Let's play around. Let's learn. And that like learning environment was so awesome. Like my other manager was good, but he wasn't a good teacher and he wasn't a good instructor for Active Directory. Where the other guy was like, "Hey, sit down. Let's really learn this." And when I got to my real first help desk job, I was able to crush Active Directory because I knew it inside and out by that point. So a lot of this here is like if I wanted to come in, for example, for Frank Castle and do a password reset. If we're in Active Directory, this is where we do it, right? So if we want to look at the account permissions and the properties and everything else, we have it. Like we can come into account. We could say, hey, does the password expire here? When should the password expire? We could take a look at what he's a member of, all right, what groups he is. So Frank Castle is just a regular domain user here. Where if we take a look at Tony Stark, we could see that Tony Stark's in a lot of different things here, where he's a administrator, domain admin, enterprise admin, et cetera, et cetera. So we have the ability to manage accounts within here. If an account gets locked out, guess what? Here's the unlock button, right? So we have a lot of permissions and settings and things that we can do within Active Directory. And this is just a very, very, very high level overview. If you've never used Active Directory before, I highly recommend going and playing around with it, maybe taking a course on YouTube or something, and just really understanding what it's capable of because it's very robust. I would say 99% of medium to large organizations use it. So it's something that you should be familiar with, especially if you're going to be working in the pen test field. All right. Okay. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the other side of Active Directory. So with Active Directory, there's a lot of quote unquote features. Okay, I call them features that ship inherently out of the box that are vulnerable. And these are things that Microsoft just says, hey, not our problem. You should know better. And the issue is most people don't know better, especially if you've never been through a pen test. A lot of what we're going to see today and what we're going to see moving forward are just features of Active Directory, and they're inherently vulnerable. So that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at the different attacks that we're going to uh, pull off, and these are going to be the most common attacks that you'll see in a network. All right. So let's go ahead and flip over. I'm going to go back to my slides because I want to walk you through some of this. All right. So initial AD attack vectors. The first one we're going to talk about today is called LLMNR poisoning. This also used to be known as NetBIOS poisoning or MBTNS poisoning. LMNR is the link local multicast name resolution. Say that 3 times fast. So LMNR is used to identify hosts when DNS fails to do so. The big issue with LMNR is that the service utilizes a user's username and password hash, okay, when appropriately responded to. So I'll show you what this means when we get into it, but let's take a look at a very high level overview. All right. And with this, we have a victim and we have a server, and then we have a hacker attacking in the middle. All right. We have this victim here, and it says, hey, can you connect to HackM? And this victim is trying to connect to a user share that's out there. All right. So maybe they're trying to get to Hack Me. They type in HackM, they mistype it. DNS isn't finding HackM. So the server says, I really have no idea what you're talking about here. And so in that case, because the server doesn't know, the victim's going to go back out and they're going to say, hey, does anybody on my server know how to connect to this? So what they're going to do is they're going to send out a broadcast message. All right. So broadcast goes to everybody. Does anybody know how to connect to this? And then we're going to be sitting in the middle. This is a man in the middle attack. And we're going to say, I do. Go ahead and send me your hash and I'll get you connected. All right. We're lying, of course. And in this situation, what happens is the victim will send over their hash, and then we can collect the hash and either take that offline and try to crack it, or we can do what's called a relay attack and try to relay that over. All right. So we will use a tool called Responder. The screenshot's a little bit old. I'll show you guys how to use Responder in your latest and greatest environments. They took away the -R flag as well, so we don't need it. So I'll just kind of show you what we're going to do. But basically, what we're doing here is we're sitting and just listening. All right. We've got different poisoners that are set up, and we've got different servers that are set up. So we're just sitting there and listening for any sort of traffic that might need responded to over the wire. And if we can get an appropriate response back, we can capture a hash. So I'll show you what this looks like, and then we'll talk through some attack strategies and where we use responder in the real world. So let's take an example here where we have a file share that cannot be accessed, right? Or we have an event that occurs, and this event occurs. Maybe somebody types in the wrong, the wrong record or the wrong share. In this case, we just point directly to the attacker machine. Now, every time I run this class and I teach this lesson, people ask me, does it have to be a bad file share? No, it's a lot of different things that can happen. You saw, if we go back, all the different events that can occur here over HTTP, over WPAT, over SMB, SQL, FTP. There's a lot of different ways that we can capture LMNR traffic. All right, it doesn't just have to be this. This is just the most easiest, whatever. It's the easiest to demonstrate in a lab environment because we don't have 1,000 users sitting on a network causing events to happen. All right. So in this case, we just point it to ourselves and it makes the hash appear. It's easy. All right. So what happens is we listen for an event happens, we capture that event, and we get the IP address of the person that's sending it through. We get the domain, we get the user, and then we get a password hash. All right. So once the event happens, we capture it, we get the hash. Then we go and we try to crack it with our favorite cracking tool. Mine is Hashcat, and we'll show you that in a few. And then we're going to go ahead and lab that out. So before we lab that out, let's talk through some basic strategy. So LMNR poisoning is one of the very, very first things that I run in an environment. If I am going to attack via LMNR, I'm going to kick off my my day at like 8 a.m. in the morning. And the issue is I want to be sniffing or sitting man in the middle position when people are coming to work. So 8 o'clock in the morning, they're logging in. I want to be there for it. Noon or 1 o'clock when they're getting back from lunch, I want to be there for it. Any sort of events happening, logons, all kinds of events happening early on or after lunch, great time to capture hashes. This is one of the easiest footholds you will ever get when you are on an internal engagement. I've had students write to me all the time and say, hey, I got domain admin within a couple of hours because of LMNR poisoning, and that was pretty much end of the day. So all we need for this to happen is a hash and a weak password that we can crack. So if the company has a weak password policy, then we are going to be good to go on our end. So keep that in mind. I run Nessa scans when I kick things off as well, but I run this. I make sure this is the first thing that I run because it's the lowest hanging fruit. It's the easiest win we're going to get in the entire network. All right. So this is the first lesson you should know and make sure you're tracking. So let's go ahead and boot up our Kali Linux machines. I'm going to go ahead and delete that and clear this. And then we'll just make sure I have everything open. I'll make these a couple bigger here. So the first thing that we're going to run is going to be responder. So we need to run responder with sudo. So just say sudo responder. It should look like this. I have the verbose tag on there. You don't have to for the -v. You can keep the WPAT on here and the domain. I think this is pretty much it. So the only thing that's really important here for now is a -I for ETH0. That's your interface. So if we go like ifconfig, check that out, we should see that we are on ETH0. So this brings up another point, by the way. You can only sniff traffic for the tunnel that you are on. So let's say, for example, that you are you're working remotely, right? All of your staff is in an office, and you're working remotely as a pen tester, and they say, "Here's VPN access to this network," and you come in maybe and say the staff is on like 10.10. I don't know, 10.0/24. And then the VPN is on 10.10.10.1/24. Well, this network is all you'll be able to sniff. You will not capture any traffic from this network. It's only what's sitting on your network here. So keep that in mind. You are only on the tunnel that you're on. So when we're doing pen tests, it is best to ask your client to make sure that you are on a network where employees are actually generating traffic. All right? Only when they're generating traffic. So think about that. All right. The other side of this is that sometimes clients will put together, they'll put together, or put you, I should say, they'll put you in like the most random subnet. Like clients will put us on, they will put us on like a printer subnet as an example, and like all we have are printers on our network. Sure, we can reach the rest of the network, we can do vulnerability scanning, and they say, oh, you can reach everything, you're fine. um but the issue is we are limited on the traffic that we can sniff or do man in the middle attacks against, right? So it's one of those things. So you want to make sure that you're on a network that's generating traffic in this case, because that makes LMNR possible. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and actually take a look at a real example of responder. I'm going to go ahead and run this. You can ignore the errors that are happening down here. I saw somebody in chat ask if you can take down a network with responder. I never have I ever. So there are things that I'll show you, especially like IPv6 attacks, that can definitely take down a network when you're acting like a DNS server. That will take down a network very, very quickly. In this case, I've never had a situation where LMNR took down a network. Not saying it's not possible, but I'm just saying that not saying that I've ever seen it happen. So we've got our responder listening. We're listening for events. Again, you can ignore this these socket errors here, and we're going to go ahead and try to run this attack. So we're just going to be willy-nilly victim over here. I'm going to go ahead and log into my Frank Castle machine, and we're just going to say, I think his password is password1. Okay, you can see I was playing around with this earlier. So what I want you to do, let me go ahead and make this bigger as well, just so people don't yell at me. You guys are always yelling at me. All right. So I'm going to point this machine at, or I'm going to point this share at my attacker IP address. So that is 192.168.138.140. You could always just come into your Kali Linux machine and do your ifconfig just to verify. I'm again at 192.168.138.140. Your IP address should not be changing throughout this course, hopefully. So point it at your attacker machine, and then let's go ahead and run that. And I'm doing this from the Punisher, all right? So from Frank Castle's machine, it's going to try to connect. It's going to say it didn't, and then we're going to go over and we're going to see, hey, a bunch of hashes flew through. Awesome. So just kind of like the demo looked like, it looks like we got an IP address of 192.168.138.145. That is Marble F Castle. We've got F Castle Marble here. We've got this whole hash that we can now go and try to crack. All right. So this is what we do. We'll sit there, man in the middle. Hashes will fly through. We'll take those hashes, run them through our favorite password cracking tool, and we will await the results and just see what happens. Hopefully we crack. Hopefully they have some admin access or something somewhere that provides us some access, and then we just leverage that and continue on. Do we always get this to work? No, especially if a company's been through a pen test before. We might not see this as an active or possible path or attack. All right. So in this case, we hope and we we hope that we get a hash back, and we'll just pretend that we did on our engagement today. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And go ahead and save this to a file for now. I'm going to leave it up actually, and then we'll talk about where I'm going to put this here shortly. So here, we have a few options of what we can do. So when it comes to hash cracking, remember we ran hash cracking once or twice in this course before, and I told you about why you don't run it on a virtual machine. So today we're going to run it on our actual machines. I'm just going to show you some techniques, tips, and tricks that you can use to hunt down what hash you're after, and then also we're going to talk about different types of password lists that are out there and what you might want to use depending on your engagement. So here, if we come to this screen and we want to use Hashcat as an example, we can do a Hashcat and then we can just say dash dash help, right? Say we don't have access out for some reason to the internet, or we're just being lazy, and we want to know the mode. Remember, we have the mode of the module here that we want to use to identify NTLM v2. Well, if you actually look through Hashcat, they have the entire list of all the modes and modules, whatever you call them, throughout. So you can go in their help file or the help command and get that. So an easier way of doing this is just to like grep out. You can just grep NTLM, for example, and then you can just look up your hash. So we have NTLM v2. It's not NT. So we could say, hey, our mode of cracking today is going to be 5600. All right. So this is a quick, easy way to do it from your command line to figure out what you need to run or what number you need to run with your attack. All right, let's go out to the web, shall we? I've got all this stuff open from last time. What we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go out to Google, and I'm going to show you a few different techniques that we use. This is gigantic, but that's okay. So there's a few popular lists. One that people will mention to you is called SecList. If you just Google SecList GitHub like this, you should get this here. And you can just open SecList in a new tab. We'll go ahead and do that. The other one that I like to use, or what we use internally, is RockU 2021. All right. And I think there is a GitHub for it. So let's see. Right here. Let's talk through these lists really quick. So SecList is great in the sense that it has a bunch of different lists depending on what you need. And it gets updated frequently. You can see like 24 days ago for the fuzzing list, 11 days ago in the bin. That's pretty good. Here we have like a password section that if we wanted to come and access different passwords, they've got all different kinds of passwords in here. The 200 most used passwords, the 500 worst passwords. You can come through and have all different kinds of things. They've got Dutch word lists, a German word list. So depending on the organization that you're attacking, this could be very useful to come in here and use some of these lists to try to pull this down. When we were doing, like, we talked about the SSH brute forcing and trying to see if there's a weak password for SSH and seeing if we can get logged in. Typically, we use the 500 worst passwords list because we're just trying to see, again, how bad is the password? We're not going to sit there and try to log into SSH all day. We're just trying to see if we get detected brute forcing an SSH server. All right. So this is one of these things that is great. I see chat memeing on the Bible passwords. However, I will say that the longest password I've ever cracked, I think it's still 19 characters. There might be a 20 character in there. And it was a Bible password. So it was a Bible verse. It has spaces in it. It was a damn good password. The issue was it was just a popular Bible verse, so it was easy to crack. All right. So it's one of those things. But these sec lists are great. There's all different kinds of lists in here. There's different fuzzing lists. It's not just for passwords. I mean, you can come in here for different fuzzing types, and I mean, it's fantastic. So put this in your back pocket. Know that sec lists is here. Dig through this when you're trying to look for different types of fuzzing, and keep this in your notes because it's a great resource. Also 41,000 stars. I mean, that's I don't know of any other security tool or anything similar that has that many stars on GitHub. All right, Rock You 2021. Let's uh let's talk about this. All right. So Rock You 2021 came out last year, and it is ginormous. Uh, it is let's see, 82 billion unique entries. All right, I believe it is 90 gigs to download, 90-ish gigs. Um, they have a magnet, they have a torrent file, they have a non files. Good luck downloading this over a non files or bay files or any of these. The download speeds are probably not going to be ideal. I would recommend torrenting if you want to. This would probably be the best bet. So if you download this, it's a great list. We use this because of the robustness and the up to dateness of this list. We also use this list with different types of rule sets. So let me show you. One rule to rule them all is one that we want to Google. Okay, and if you look up password cracking rules, everybody has their favorite password cracking rules. Some people write custom rules. This one rule to rule them all, I've been using for a couple of years, and it has been very, very good to me. They use a bunch of different rule sets and combinations that take on what a real user might do, like a capital first letter, as an example. And they take that and they take the words from your word list and they start mutating the different words into this rule set, and it lands so many passwords. It's incredible what it can do. So between this rule set and this password list of RockU 2021, we see a lot of success. Now it depends on what type of password you're cracking. Some are very slow to try to crack through. I've got a 3090. I'm looking at getting a second 3090 just because some of these take a long time. So it really depends on what you're up against and what type of hash you're up against, because sometimes you won't even be able to use RockU 2021 effectively. Comparatively with a rule set adds a lot of time to it. So you have to have some beefy hardware to be able to run these in the first place. But if you're looking at doing password cracking, this is a great combination. It's a great starter kit of doing RockU with a rule set. All right. So I'm going to take a drink of my coffee and then we'll get back into it. Okay. So, with that out of the way, what I want you to do is on your main operating system. If you're running this in a VM, do not do this. Just on your main operating system, go out to the web, go to Google, go to Hashcat or Google Hashcat, and you should have hashcat.net come up first. All right. So this should be the page that you're on. If it doesn't look like this, do not download. All right. Okay, we're going to want the hashcat binaries. Go ahead and just download that. This should be a 7-zip. If you do not know how to unzip a 7-zip at this point, I question you being in this class this far. All right. So hopefully you can unzip that. Once it's unzipped, bring this over. It should look something like this. I've got a bunch of hashes in here. So I keep, hashes. I keep rocku.txt in here as an example. If you don't have rocku, putting rocku in here will be fine. If you want to make a fake password list today, you can just go grab like a sec list or something and just dump that in here. Anything will do. I'm just showing you the methodology. You really don't even have to follow along too much if you don't want to. Like if you just want to take notes on what I'm doing, I think that's fine. But I'm going to walk you through what I do here. As you can see, I've got like different hash files. Like if I put a hash in here, I'll just put it into hashes.txt. And then I'll come in here and I'll have one rule to rule them all if I want to run that. And then I've got RockU for the very, very easy testing, but I keep my password list on my RockU 2021 on a separate drive just because it's so beefy. So Okay. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open up a command prompt because that's where I'm going to run this from. Bring this over so you all can see it. And I'm just going to CD into my desktop and then CD into Hashcat. Okay, so from here, I'm going to run hashcat.exe. Oops. And then we're going to give this a mode of 5600. Remember, we found that earlier on. Okay, and then we want to give it the hashes. So hashes.txt. And this is where you grab the hash from the last time, right? Whatever you grabbed here. Go ahead and grab this hash. Any of these will do. Even though they're different, they all translate to the same thing, I promise. So you can go ahead and copy this and put this in a hashes.txt file or whatever you want to call it. You can call it password. I don't care what you want to call it. But I called mine hashes.txt. I put it in the same folder just to make it easier. You can call it from wherever you want. And then you have to have your password file. For demonstration purposes, I have rocku.txt. You, again, can use whatever you want here. So in this instance, I'm going to go ahead and do a dash capital O. That's just best practice. This optimizes the hash cracking. And so I'm going to go ahead and hit enter on this. Now, if you wanted to use a rule set and do mutation here, you could do a -R and then put your rule set in before you finish this out. And that would do mutation. For this password, we won't need it. It cracks in a whole second. So, and my screen went black on on Twitch. I'm going to go ahead and just refresh really quick just to make sure. My chat's down for some reason in my main view. So I'm monitoring Twitch to make sure that I can see everything. Okay, so our password was password one. Very, very weak password. So we're going to go ahead and just keep that in our back pocket. We know that FCastle's password is password one. So we have successfully cracked this. This is as real world and easy as it can get. All right. I promise you, this is as easy as it can get. Yeah, I guess when I'm streaming, it doesn't like me using my graphics card while also streaming. So this is very graphics intense. I can see that why that would kick that out. Anyway, so in this instance, we've got this, and we're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna just close this out, and let's talk about the defenses against this attack. All right. All right. So this is a lot of mumbo jumbo here. Best defense against this is to disable LLMNR. If you are a network administrator watching the stream right now or somebody in control of your network, disable LLMNR. Do your do your network a favor and disable LLMNR. If for some reason you figure that you cannot disable LLMNR, you should require network access control. You should require strong passwords greater than 14 characters in length. All right. Limit common word usage. So the more complex and longer the password it is, the harder it is for us to crack the hash. In theory, here you could use something like a privilege access management tool, which we'll talk about in the next set of slides. But this is something just to consider. This is an easy win here for network administrators, right? Okay. So next, we're going to talk about an attack called SMB relay. SMB relay attacks. So it is the same sort of attack, except instead of gathering the hashes and cracking them, we're going to actually just relay those to another machine. So there are two requirements for this. One, SMB signing must be disabled on the target. Okay, SMB signing says, hey, I am who I say I am, and it validates it. So it disables relay attacks. What we're doing is we're taking our user hash and we're passing it to a machine and saying, hey, I'm Frank Castle. Just come on, let me in. And if there's no SMB signing, there's no verification there, and it just says, yeah, come on in. You belong here. The other side of this is that I say the relay credentials must be admin on machine. This is not technically true, but it's true in my opinion to the point of if you want anything advantageous. You can relay non-admin credentials and get some information and some enumeration, but it's really advantageous to be an admin in this situation. So it's one of those things that we're looking for those two requirements: SMB signing disabled and relayed credentials must be an admin on the machine. You cannot relay to your own machine, by the way. All right. So what's so special about this? Well, this is another quote unquote feature of Active Directory or Windows machines. Now, one thing Microsoft did right was they enabled SMB signing on all servers. So anytime you have a server, SMB signing is there by default. Now, if somebody goes and shuts it off, which I have seen before, then that server is fair game as well. But all workstations, SMB signing is disabled by default or enabled but not required, which is essentially the same thing. So we're going to take a look at that in our environment, but let's take a quick look at what this looks like. So in Responder, we actually have to turn off the response to SMB and HTTP. So we're just going to go ahead and edit Responder configuration. I'll show you how to do that. From there, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look and run Responder again. Same concept, but this time the only thing that's going to change is you can see the HTTP server is off and the SMB server is listed as off where previously it was not. All right. We're going to run a tool called NTLM Relay X. It's going to do relaying. We're going to have to use a target file. So we're going to have to identify our targets. And then we're going to do SMB2 support. That is going to eventually trigger when an event occurs. So same thing, just like before, an event occurs. And guess what happens this time? Look at this. It dumps out password hashes, local SAM hashes. That's incredible. Why are local hashes so great? Well, a lot of times they are reused significantly. Okay? I can't tell you the amount of times where I've seen like a help desk account or an admin account and it's the same credential over and over and over again. So again, network admins, if you're watching this and you're using the same local account password for all of your machines, if you're like provisioning your new machines with the same local admin password, change them, use laps, do something different than doing this. All right. So in this instance, we're going to go ahead and move forward, but this is what this will look like. I'll also show you how you can get a shell on here. So there's different ways to do this. So we're going to go ahead and take this to the lab environment. Now, the lab's going to require some additional setup, all right? So first thing, we're going to turn back on the Spider-Man machine. We're going to log into both of our machines. So we're going to log into the Punisher. We're going to log into Spider-Man. And in here, we are domain joined. So if we say fcastle and then password 1, I know I'm already logged in, but just doing it that way. Here I have administrator. Actually, what I'm going to do is log out of this. I want you to log in as an administrator, okay? So you should be able to do your admin at or your T Stark account if you followed mine. So if we just do administrator at marvel.local, something like this, and then I believe the password should still be the same. So log into both computers, all right? And you're going to repeat the step twice. So here we're going to do password. And let's take a look here. I'm going to change the user settings really quick, just so you guys can see it and don't yell at me about the size of the screen. I'm fragile. I can only take so much more yelling. That should have worked. I don't know why it didn't. There we go. Okay. So that's one. Let's get this one. We'll do it together. Go ahead, display settings. I'll make this bigger really quick. Live demos for the win. All right. So what you want to do here is we're just going to type in something along the line of users and groups. We're looking for the edit local users and groups. So if you type in users, it should pull that up. I want you to pull that up for both of these. All right. It doesn't matter, but I'm for consistency, we're going to make Frank Castle an admin on both computers. Okay. So if you go to groups and you go to administrators, all we're doing is we're going to add domain Frank Castle to this list. I've already done that. But if you just come in here and you type in fcastle and you check names, it will find him for you. You hit OK. Easy breezy. And I'm going to show you this yet again one more time. Same thing on Spider-Man. Remember, this person has to be a local admin on the computer or an admin on the machine. All right. So if we go to edit local users and groups, same concept, go to groups, go to administrators. And again, you want to make sure fcastle, Marvel fcastle, is an admin on this machine. All right. So let's go ahead and cancel here. Once you've got it added, go ahead and reboot, and I'll do it with you. Reboot both machines. It wants to push updates. That's a hard pass. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and get on our attacker machine. And we're going to go ahead and Control C, close out a responder if you've got it open. First thing we want to do is we want to edit the configuration settings. So if we go sudo mousepad, and sorry if you can hear my dogs barking. I don't know what they're going on about. Etsy responder type.conf, just like this. Okay. And then come in here, and all you're going to do is you're going to disable, if I could type my own password correctly. Okay, we're going to turn off SMB. So instead of on, it should say off. We're going to turn off HTTP. So instead of on, it should say off. The rest should be good. You can just Control S and save that. So again, SMB off, HTTP off. Well, happy International Dog Day to you all as well. I didn't know, but here we are. All right, so that's off. Now when we run responder, we should see that HTTP is off, SMB is off. Same concept, all right? So running those, we're good. The other side of this is we want to run this against our machine. So briefly, I'll show you what we can do. We can run an nmap command. So if we say nmap and then -- script equals, we could do smb2 security mode.nse. This will check for SMB signing being enabled or disabled. So we can do port 445, and then you can give it a network. Like you can do 192.168.138.0/24. This may or may not work. All right. So I'm going to sweep my network and see if I can find machines that I can put in my targets file. And this says that everything is closed. All right. Let's take a look at why that is. So if we come in here, not everything responds to traffic this way, right? So if we come in here and we say, hey, I know the machine is, I believe it's 136. Let's go ahead and take a look really quick at our Spider-Man machine. Let's log in. And we can log in as administrator. It really doesn't matter. Let's grab the IP address. Okay, if we come in here and just grab the IP real quick, I'm on 136. So let's do that against the IP address of the Spider-Man machine. So in this case, 136, you're going to see that it comes back as, hey, I don't see anything as open here. The host seems down. If it's blocking our ping probes, which this case it is, we can do it with the -pn. So if you want to sweep the network, you're going to have to sweep with a -pn. It's going to give you a lot of false positives or false, no, I guess not false. It's just going to give you a lot of extra output. So you'll have to grep on the security results based on what you're seeing. All right. So in this case, you can see message signing is enabled, but not required. This is the same thing to me as SMB signing being disabled. All right. So if it's not required, it's not working. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and run an attack against this. So we're going to use NTLM relay X .py. All right. And we're going to give it a target file, which actually, let's create a target file in the new tab really quick. So if you just echo out that IP address, like if you go 192.168.138.136 and you just put it in a targets.txt, that should be good enough. All right. Okay. And if we cat out targets really quick, you can see it's got 192.168.138.136. Now let's go ahead and use that targets file. So basically what we would do is identify what targets have SMB signing disabled or enabled but not required. We put them in a targets file, and then we would try to pass the hashes that we see, or relay the hashes, I should say, to these targets and see if we can get any sort of wins here. This is another quick, easy win that we can get within the network. So we do our targets file, and then all we're going to do is do SMB2 support, and we should be able to run this just like that. And then your screen should look something like this. Okay, so now we have to do a little bit of a prayer to the demo gods and make sure that this works, but we're going to go ahead and try to come into the Punisher machine. I'm going to log in as Frank Castle, and we're going to log in with him and then do an event, make an event happen. So it just takes a second. So let's make that event happen. 140. Cross our fingers and hope that it worked. Hey, it worked. All right. You'll see nothing here, right? You'll see nothing in your responder because it's just relaying the hash over. So it's saying, hey, I'm Frank Castle. Let me in. And this says, okay, I see you're Frank Castle. I'm not going to verify you with any sort of SMB signing. And then it just dumps out these local hashes for us. How nice of them. I will save every one of these local hashes. We can go and try to crack these hashes. Do you need to? Yes and no. In theory, no, because you can just pass the hash around with local hashes fairly easily. We'll talk about that later on in the course. But you can also crack these, and I've seen situations where the admin password is used in other places. Like I've cracked an admin password, and then that was used to disable the antivirus running on a machine because it was the same password being used. So it just depends. You never know what passwords you're going to crack or see that will show up later on. So this is something that can be advantageous for you. All right. So with that here, we're going to go ahead and Control C. I want to show you one more thing. We can also do interactive mode. So I just showed you how to like dump out hashes really quick, which is fine. But we can also do a -I for interactive mode here. Okay. And then we're going to come in here and we're going to run this attack again, but you're going to see something's a little bit different this time. Let's try just running this one more time. Yes. So you see here that it says, hey, it spawned a client shell via TCP on 127.0.0.1 port 11,000. Okay. So if you do that, what can we do? We can say netcat 127001 11,000, just like that. Hey, it looks like we connected to something. We say help. We've got a shell here. All right. So we could take a look at like shares and see what shares are available. We do shares. All right. And then we can connect to different directories. Like we can mount. Let's see if we mount C. Then we could do a dir or ls. Sorry. Maybe I'm not mounted. Let's see. Or use. Sorry, not mount. We're going to use C. And then dir or ls. Struggle busing today. Because it's a Windows machine, I keep going to dir. It's very much ls in this syntax. So we have access to the machine. We can see the files that's within here. We can do a put. We can do a get. We have full control of this machine. All right. You can also do commands with MTL and Relay. You can do a -C for a command. You can run your own malware if you wanted to and execute that instead of executing this shell. There's tons of options and robustness. What I do is I typically just load it the way I did before because I'm after these hashes at the end of the day. If I want to get a shell at this point, I can come back and use this hash to get a shell now. And I can control that easily. So I'm not too worried about like getting an interactive shell like this. I'll show you how we can get a shell with hashes later on. But this is just something to take note of and consider. But I usually just run it like this and gather all the hashes that I can because hashes are incredibly valuable. So that I think is going to be a good stopping point. I have more lesson plan to teach, but I also have to respect the time of the people that are only here for like a lunch. So I don't think it'd be fair to continue on for people that can't continue on with us. So we'll pause here. I think we'll cover some more initial attack vectors, but from this standpoint, like these are two attack vectors that as an internal pen tester, you don't need any domain. You don't need like a domain joined machine or domain joined account. You can do this from just a rogue Linux machine. These are incredibly easy. When I show you the IPv6 attack on the next stream, it's going to be incredibly easy, and you're going to be like, "Holy crap!" So just this is going to get fun. And these are just again the default features of Active Directory. We've done nothing, didn't do anything, just installed Active Directory, and it's this is what we get. So thank you, Microsoft, for keeping us in business. All right. So I'm going to switch back over. Happy Friday to everybody. Almost out of coffee. My hat is like the the brightness in here is I need to adjust it. It's just bright white. So I don't have access to chat. I'm just seeing what I can see. What about Azure AD? So some of these attacks are still viable. It depends on the environment. A lot of domain controllers are in the cloud, but that doesn't mean that the workstations are in the cloud. So if you've got a full-on cloud environment, that could change some things. But in this instance, if you just have a domain controller in the cloud, it doesn't change anything. Good question. For your engagement, would a hash be a finding, or would it have to be cracked hash before it warrants a finding? It's a hash is a finding. A cracked hash is its own finding, right? So if you've got a hash that you get, that would be LMNR, like a finding for LMNR poisoning. If you crack the hash, that's a finding for a weak password or weak password policy. Ideally, we shouldn't be able to crack a hash. And I'm so sorry, chat. I know we skipped into the live, but let me switch back really quick. I forgot. We didn't talk about mitigation for SMB relays. It's Friday. I'm out of here. I'm checked out. So look, you can enable SMB signing on all devices. That is the ideal situation. That will completely stop this attack. However, it can cause performance issues with file copies. I believe it slows down the file transfer rate to, like, I think it slows it down by 15%, is what I've heard. Do I think that the slower file transfer rate is a trade off of SMB signing? No, enable SMB signing, in my opinion. Now, you can disable NTLM authentication on the network. It does completely stop the attack. However, if Kerberos stops working, Windows will default back to NTLM. So guess what? The attack will still be viable. Account tiering would be great here. So if you've ever been in an environment where you have like Bob, and Bob's a domain administrator, Bob might have an account, and then Bob might have a Bob-DA account. Ideally, we recommend tiered accounts where Bob is doing his domain admin stuff or his administrative stuff, and that he only has admin access to the machine that he needs admin access to. If he's a domain admin, then he only logs into the domain controller and nowhere else. But enforcing this kind of policy can be difficult. Same thing with local admin restrictions. It can prevent lateral movement, as you will see. I'll post some blogs that have been written up. We've done a couple on the website about the different pen test tales, and a lot of this, actually, let me see if I can walk through. I think that would be a good example for today. We can walk through some of this, but you want to prevent lateral movement. So if you limit the local admin that you have on your computers, that will help that significantly. So let me find those blogs really quick, and then we'll switch back over and we'll kind of cover those too, because I think it's valuable. And hopefully this will help you understand as well. So let me I found one. Let me find the second one. I need to blog more. All right. Okay, let's do a couple case studies. YOLO. Why not? All right. So case study number one. These are from real pen test, by the way. This one is called "You Spent How Much on Security?" Okay. So let's just do a high-level overview of this. What we've got here is we've got a internal network pen test. We've got a large U.S. hospital as the client. They're well-funded, and they have invested millions of dollars in security measures. Defenses here is IPv6 is disabled. We haven't talked about it yet, but just know that there is a viable attack with IPv6. Intrusion detection and prevention are on the machines, or is in the network. CyberArk, privileged access management, is active. So if you do not know what PAM solutions are, privileged access management solutions, basically it's a check-in, check-out kind of system. So what happens there is you have, say, Bob, and Bob wants to go retrieve his domain admin account. Well, Bob will go check out a domain admin account, or his domain admin account, and it will be valid for like 8 hours. And the password is a long, complex password. It's randomly generated when Bob checks it out. And so even if a hash is passed along the network, the password's so long that you won't be able to crack the password. There's just nothing that you can do about it because it's randomly generated. If you do get the hash and eventually crack it, by the time you crack it, the password's probably gone at this point. So it's one of those things where CyberArk is great for defense. It's just very expensive as well. They also had Symantec endpoint security on all devices. Patching was solid, no patching issues. So we were in a situation where we were against a lot of security. How do we do this? If we can't run, we can't run Responder, because Responder is, if we capture a hash, it's just going to be such a long password hash that we're not even going to be able to do anything with it. So wheels spinning, chat. Wheels spinning. Where do we think this goes? Well, it goes into SMB signing. Just because the password is strong does not mean that it cannot be relayed. So in this instance, the admin, or there was users that had admin on these machines. All right. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. So we were able to relay a hash even though the password was strong. All right. So what happens when we do that? Well, we get a shell. We can dump out the SAM database, which you saw with relay attacks earlier. We got an admin password hash. We got a couple users, but we got tech support and then another admin down here. Something to point out with password hashes is that reuse is often there. And you could see like the password hash here is the same. 15379 is what it ends. And these two user password hashes are the same. So we wanted to know like, hey, is any computer in the network, do they have an administrator password hash of this? Or do they have this admin hash of this? And can we log in with those accounts like tech support or tech support 2? And we can just do something called crack map exec and pass that around the network. In this case, I went and cracked the tech support password. It was power 10. They have since changed the password. They were okay with me putting this out there. Basically, the power 10 got into everywhere you see pwned is a pwn on this on a device. So they were local admins on all these devices. That means we were able to just bounce around every single device because the local password usage was there. All right. So again, you can have the best domain security in place and a default configuration mixed with local password reuse, especially a weak local password, though it wasn't necessary, was, it can take down a network. In this case, Power 10 actually disabled their Symantec antivirus as well. All right. So we were able to get around basically and navigate through all these systems until we found a password or a local admin that worked on the domain controller. So this didn't directly work on the domain controller, but a lot of the strategy for internal pen testing is taking your local hashes that you get and passing them around again and again. Every time you get a new local hash, you try to sweep that again because you don't know where you're going to log into. Eventually, we got a local hash. And again, it doesn't matter how strong the password is because we can do a pass the hash attack. Haven't talked about it yet, but this is something that is very viable and a lesson learned for today. And it's one of those things where they had millions of dollars on security. And, we were able to just take them down. The other blog that I pulled up is a little bit more advanced. So I'm going to hold off on that today because we haven't talked a lot of the topics. But hopefully that was informative and you can, you can use that and think about that in a network. Even when you have good security, it's one of those things that, can still take you down. So I'm going to come back and we'll do a little bit of Q&A. I've got a sales call that I need to prep for today. So I'll probably just stick around to like maybe 1:15. Will multi-factor stop this attack? It depends where the multi-factor authentication lands. And it depends on what kind of multi-factor. If it's like a push notification, definitely not. But the local admin hashes won't do anything. The relaying won't really do anything either in this situation. Good question. You want the URL for the article? Let me paste that in chat. How often do you do 80 in real life pen test? It comes in waves, but anytime we do an internal, with the exception of one that I've ever done in my life, it has always been Active Directory. So the most common, kind of like we talked about, but the most common pen test type is definitely an external pen test. I would say a web app is second, and then internals are third. Most organizations think that, hey, if I can protect the outside, I don't have to worry about the inside. Or a lot of compliance standards dictate that they have to get external pen testing, but don't dictate that they have to get internal pen testing. So they don't do internal pen testing. So it's a lot of it's compliance driven more than like, hey, I want to be really secure. So at the end of the day, it depends on what they're asked. But the majority of, I would say, not majority, but the most common pen test that we do is definitely an external pen test. What kind of coffee am I drinking? And I saw somebody ask about the coffee mug I'm using. This one is from Las Vegas, probably got at DEF CON, if I'm being honest. I don't know what coffee this is. I think we're drinking, if I had to guess, it's Dunkin'. If I had to guess. I'm usually not the one who does the coffee shopping, but I just drink coffee with a little bit of creamer and that's it. Where did I get my shirt? I got this from a gentleman named Todd Painter. Actually, I can say his name because he was just on a John Hammond YouTube video. He gave this to me at a conference we were at together in Dallas in June, and this is a Huntress Labs T-shirt. So it says Hunter Hacker. But so shout out to Huntress Labs for the T-shirt. Matt Bogenberger, thank you so much for the 10 more gifted subs. You are by far and away our number one gifted sub person. So thank you. I appreciate it, man. Looks like Purple Elf rated with 32 viewers. Sorry, I don't get the notifications on my stream anymore for this. So thank you for that. Thank you everybody for all the different subscriptions that have come through today as well. There's been quite a few as always. I appreciate it. So thank you so much. Can we perform SMB relay, NTLM relay in a non-AD environment? These are NTLM v2 hashes and they're domain hashes. So I would say no, though there's probably some sort of relay that might be out there that I don't know about. I will be honest in that my experience has always been in Active Directory environments, so it's hard to say, but I would say no. How do we know the network is running Active Directory? Honestly, look, you just ask the client if they're on Active Directory. If not, there are certain queries and commands that you can run to identify if there's a domain controller within the network, and you kind of can start from there. Why is internal network pen test important? If an attacker cannot get through external defense, how will he exploit the internal? Great question. You make an assumption though that the external defense is impenetrable, right? There's no such thing. Doesn't matter how big your or how great your security is, how much money you spend on it. You could have the perfect defense in line, and all it takes is one individual to mess that up for everybody, right? So it's one of those things that your people are going to be your weakest link, and it's hey, can they get in through through an attack externally? Can they phish you? How about if they go on site and drop a Dropbox in your location? What are you going to do about that? Is your security well rounded everywhere? What happens if it's not? What happens if somebody gets through a crack, right? And that's why you do an internal pen test, because you still want to safeguard what's inside the network if they do get in. So you need to make sure that you're being careful and that your source code doesn't get stolen, or your intellectual property, or they don't ransomware your domain. There's a lot of concerns internally if they break through that could be detrimental to an organization. So Gar7, thanks, man. Thank you so much for the 25 gifted subs. You guys are on fire today. Uh, I think that's the most I've ever seen at one time. So thank you so much. Between you and Matt, very, very awesome. Thank you guys very much. And you're also helping out. You're supporting us, yes, but you're also helping support people that otherwise aren't subbed and could not maybe afford to watch the videos here as well. So appreciate it. Uh, I don't know how to say your name. I'm not very good at lead speak. So K8NF8N. Thank you so much for the 10 subs. I'll just phonetically spell out your name, or actually literally spell out your name. So thank you so much for the gift subs, everybody. I really do appreciate it. How to get the victim to enter our machine IP address so that responder can capture the user hash. That's not what needs to happen. Remember, when we talked about it in the beginning, um, the events are going on in the network all day. We want to make sure that we're set up and ready to go at 8 o'clock when everybody's logging into the network. We want to make sure we're there when lunch comes around, because we want to make sure people are active again coming back from lunch. The what I'm showing you is a labbed environment. We don't have any user traffic going on. We don't have anything going on. So it's easier to just show you by pointing to my IP address to trigger the events and to trigger what's happening. In a real world environment, you just set up responder and you run it and you just let it run. That's it. Does the PH cover the same techniques shown tonight? Yes, it does. So these are all the attacks you'll see are going to be within the PH, and if you have that class, you should be able to follow along as well. Would you recommend buying an older machine with lots of cores and RAM instead of a newer machine with fewer cores and less RAM? I guess it depends on the cost and the performance, right? Um, just because it has less RAM doesn't mean that the RAM's not better. It depends what type of RAM we're talking about. So at the end of the day, it just depends on the performance of the machine. So and your budget. So if you've got the budget, definitely go for it. I probably should make a video on like different laptops that people can buy or different, I get asked about hardware a lot. So it's one of those things that I could probably make a video about, what to buy and what you should. But my baseline recommendations, if you're going to get like a hacking laptop, is probably at least 16 gigabytes of RAM with an i7 at this point. If you're going to do any virtual machine stuff like that, but I obviously budget's a big concern for a lot of people. Yeah. So SMB signing and not being enabled on a machine is a default workstation setting. It doesn't have to be a domain joined machine. We're just relaying domain hashes. We're relaying NTLM v2 hashes. So the SMB signing, it's kind of a chained attack in that case. So that makes sense that you would see that, but that the attack would not be viable because it's not an Active Directory domain. Okay. I'm being told by Zach there's no more questions or nothing else. So I think we'll end it here today. And I did not prep or do anything for rating or anything like that. So I apologize. We'll be back on our game next week. It's been kind of an off week for me, if I'm being honest. But uh, as I said in the beginning, make sure you take breaks. You have to, if you need to, cut off what you need to survive, to sustain. So I will see you guys next Wednesday as we cover more Active Directory and we get into more of the fun stuff. But thank you for hanging out and thank you for yet another great week. I can't believe we're already through 10 weeks. I look forward to teaching you again next week. So thank you, everybody. Peace out. It's great.